Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. In this video, I'm bringing you 10 awesome tricks to beat your opponent super fast and leave them with no chance at all. So let's get started right away with the first trick, which involves the king's pawn. If you like these kinds of videos, don't forget to give it a like, because that's the only way I know if you enjoy them or not, and that way I can make more. When they reply with e5, as you can see, the two most popular moves in chess, we're going to bring out our King's Gambit. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, the first trap comes courtesy of the King's Gambit. They take this pawn. Notice that we're giving away a pawn on the second move, but we're just going to keep going like nothing happened. Knight to f3, we place the knight here and develop our first piece. If they play d5, which is a very natural move to destabilize this spot here, notice that knight to f6 would be a bit weak because we'd be forcing this knight out right away. Maybe it makes more sense to play d5 to fight for the center, so we're not going to capture. Instead, we're going to play knight to c3. Black thinks, okay, I have an extra pawn, so I'll trade pieces and end up in a great position. And now, a move like bishop to g5 would already give us some really nice options, like playing queen to e2. And notice that now we're aiming a laser beam at the king. We're placing the queen to check the king, and the only thing stopping it is this knight here. And a lot of people here think, I'm telling you, really, a lot of people do the following. Since the queen is moved, I'll capture the knight, so the queen has to move again and loses a tempo. But here, there's this move. Knight to f6, checkmate. Incredible. We check with the knight and check with the queen. Therefore, the king can't go anywhere. Hey, chess teacher, aren't you going to include the Dutch defense trick in this compilation of 10 tricks? Of course I am. It's one of my favorite tricks. I love it. It's come up in tons of games. When someone plays the Dutch defense against you, a rare defense that not many people know, just place your bishop next to the pawn. And now they'll say, well, this move looks really bad. I'll chase your bishop away and you don't have much else to do. But now the trick is to put it here. And your opponent will quickly realize that you've lost the bishop with a series of super simple moves. They threaten it with this pawn and now with this one, and notice that this bishop is completely lost. That's why they've already fallen into our trap. We don't care about the bishop. We're just going to push this pawn to e3, and when they take the bishop, we're simply going to checkmate with the queen, since this king can't go anywhere, and none of the pieces can block this check. But you might say, hey, chess teacher, wait, what if my opponent realizes what I'm doing and doesn't take the bishop, but instead plays h5, and that way we can't checkmate anymore, right? Why? Because it's protected by the rook. Well, it doesn't matter at all, because we're going to move the bishop over here and threaten this checkmate over here. Notice that it would be exactly the same checkmate. If they take your bishop, we'd have an easy checkmate, right? But of course, you might say, well, then I'll defend with the rook. I'll defend this square and this one. But what happens when one of your opponent's pieces is defending 2 points at once? We can distract the defender. For example, here with queen takes pawn check, a spectacular queen sacrifice, it would be checkmate except for the rook. But when the rook is diverted, it stops protecting this square, and now our bishop will be the king at checkmate. We've won the game in just a few moves. Now, here's an incredible trap for the French defense. This trap works especially well in fast games. The French defense is this one here, e4, e6. The most common move is to continue with d4. And now black will play b5. This is the French defense. There are many types of French defense. The exchange French, the advanced French. We're going to play the advanced French. Here's our trap. In the advanced French, for those who don't know, the key point is the d4 pawn. That's why black quickly plays c5 to attack this pawn here. We defend it with the c3 pawn. Look, they attack us with a pawn, we defend with a pawn, but our opponent keeps attacking with the knight from c6, continuing to put pressure on this point here. That's why we also defend with the knight. But even more, our opponent places the queen on b6, also targeting this point, and this is where we stop their spectacular trap. We're going to play our bishop to d3. What does our bishop on d3 do? It stops defending this pawn with the queen, and look, they're attacking it with 1, 2 and 3, and now we're only defending it with 2, because the third defender is no longer protecting this pawn. So our opponent thinks they're going to win the pawn super easily. Just by making the exchanges, notice that they've won a pawn. Now queen takes knight, and the result is that they've won a pawn. However, there's this spectacular discovered check, a check to the king with the bishop, and on the next move, we're going to take the queen. For example, if they move the king, we take the queen, and if they block with the bishop, then first we take the bishop with check, push the king aside a bit, and now we take the queen completely clean. Hey, chess teacher, I have a friend who always plays the same moves as me. He always copies me. If I play this pawn here, he plays here too. He keeps mirroring me the whole time. Well, let me show you how to beat him with this super simple trick. We're going to place our knight on f3, attacking his pawn. Oh, so now he's starting to get a little too clever, huh? Knight to f6, he does the same as you and also attacks this pawn. All right then, let's go along with it. We take this pawn, and when he takes ours, notice that what we're going to do is a very interesting move like queen to e2. This queen is already looking at his king with x-ray vision. Notice that it wouldn't do him any good to keep copying us, because we'd take his knight and defend this knight here, so we'd end up with an extra knight. That's why once we reach this point, your opponent has to move his knight. And once he moves his knight, now there's this incredible discovered attack, knight to c6, check with the queen. He can't block with the queen because we'd win the queen, very tasty. And he can't block with the bishop either, because we'd also win the queen. Very tasty. So whatever he does in this position, we're going to win the queen. Alright, what other defense could they play against us? The Scandinavian defense. Whoa. Well, I've got a spectacular trap for this one. In the Scandinavian defense, notice that they attack our pawn directly on the very first move. So what are we going to do? We're going to set a trap here and let them take this pawn. Totally free, yep. And we even let them attack our knight. Since they're attacking this KNI, he can't even talk. Since they're attacking this knight, we're gonna have to move it. And we're gonna move it to this square because that way we attack their pawn again. They have to defend it, and the easiest way to do that is knight to f6. They develop a piece in addition to castling and defend this pawn here, which is the extra pawn they have. So what we're gonna do is trade this pawn here for their pawn. Now we're attacking it. That's why the simplest thing for our opponent is to capture here. It's important that we capture with the bishop. And now your opponent has secured an extra pawn. The only thing that bothers him about our position, what is it? This knight. They might try to drive it away, but that's already a serious mistake. If they ignore the threat and make a move like chasing away the knight, they're they've basically lost the game. Because there's this knight sacrifice here, a spectacular bombshell. Notice that the king is forced to capture it, because if not, look, I attack the queen and I attack the rook. They're going to lose material no matter what. That's why they have to capture this knight and accept that they've lost material. And now comes another discovered attack. Check out the queen, okay? We sacrifice the bishop here to keep the king from coming back to defend the queen. They have to capture or move over here, and whatever they do, we're going to capture the queen on the next move. Also, a clean queen in just a very few moves. Since I want you to have traps for every game, let's go. Which opening are we missing? Well, we're also missing the Caro-Kann defense. When they play it, c6. Let's see, Chess Stitcher, is there really a trap against the Caro-Kann? It's the most solid defense there is. Of course there is. On this channel, there are traps for everything. d4. We take advantage, when they don't directly occupy the center, so we do it ourselves with our pawns and gain a bit of space. However, the Caro-Kann gives up the center, because now it strikes back hard, since this pawn supports their central pawn. We're simply going to play knight to d2, kind of like a Tarrasch variation in the French defense. We play the knight to d2 and defend this pawn here. Notice that if they exchange this pawn, we simply recapture with the knight. Now the idea is very simple. Black wants to play knight to f6, but they don't really like it because after the exchanges, they're going to have to double one of these two pawns and the structure will be a bit weak. That's why instead of playing knight to f6, they first play knight to d7, so that later they can play knight to f6 with it protected and not have to double their pawns. And when we see knight to d7, we already play our move queen to e2 to line up an x-ray toward the king, because we know that when they make this move, they want to play knight to f6. And now what we do is, hey, we come over here, checkmate. We give a check with the knight, but the king can't go anywhere because he's trapped by his own pieces, and the pawn can't capture thanks to the amazing queen we've placed right here in front to pin it. Isn't this trap amazing or what? Well, just wait. There are even better ones. What opening do we have left? The terrible Damiano defense. Which one is that? After knight to f3, everything's standard so far. They have to defend this pawn. You already know this move's very common, defending with the knight. It's also very normal to play this move here to defend the pawn, but one of the worst is playing f6 to defend this pawn. This is terrible, and a lot of beginners play it. But here we have the brutal knight sacrifice. Knight takes e5, and you're basically already winning. Look, they capture your knight, it's true, you're down a knight, but too many lines open up toward the king, which we're going to take advantage of right away, starting with the queen. We give this check along the diagonal. Notice that many of you might be thinking, well, I'll block with this pawn, then check, and I'll take the rook on the next move. Therefore, it's not possible at all to play this pawn advance. After this check, they'll have to move the king. And this sequence will most likely end in checkmate. We take this pawn here, check. Notice, the king's only legal square to move to is this one here. And now we're going to keep giving checks. Now we bring in the bishop, check. The king can't go back this way, so he has to move to the side, and we're just going to trap him. First with the queen, check, and now a discovered check with the bishop. Look, between this bishop, this queen, and this bishop, we're trapping him. It would be checkmate if it weren't for this pawn. But you just play h4, and checkmate will be completely unavoidable. Notice that the only thing he can do is try to give a check over here. And we simply play c3. The threat remains the same, but now we're also attacking this bishop. Notice that the next move could be pawn takes, check, or it could be bishop takes, for example. Any move, really. Any move, even if they try to trade queens with us. So we could just come over here, check. When the king moves, we could capture the queen and we'd have a completely free extra queen. I'm telling you right now, this is totally lost. This opening is terrifying. Well, chess teacher, what's up? Do you only have traps for the white pieces or what? Are you a racist? Well, no, obviously I'm bringing you a trap with the black pieces too, since I know a lot of you have asked me for it. Check it out. We're going to play the double king's pawn opening, e4, e5, knight to f3, and now we'll play knight to f6. But we're not going to fall for the trap. Careful, don't fall for the trap I showed you earlier. When they capture this pawn, don't even think about recapturing here. What you need to do is this. Play knight to c6 and set up the spectacular trap. Why? Because after the knights are exchanged, notice that we're attacking this pawn here with our knight, and they have to defend it. That's why they usually play d3 to defend it super solidly and make sure there's no trap. But the trap does exist. We'll improve our bishop, attacking the weak spot. You already know the weak spot is right here, because it's only defended by the king, so it's a very weak point. Careful, they come to attack us with a bishop. Now what happens? This knight can't move. If this knight moves anywhere, they'll capture our queen and we'll pretty much lose the game, right? So now what we're going to do is move the knight. And not only that, we're going to sacrifice it. Notice that sacrificing it doesn't matter, because if they take it, we capture here and absolutely nothing happens. But of course you're saying, chess teacher, did you just leave your queen hanging? Are you really so bad that you're teaching me to give up my queen? What happens if they capture my queen? Then your opponent will simply have to resign after the move bishop takes on f2, check. Notice that this king can't capture because of the knight, so it can only move forward. And now we bring in the other piece missing from our attack, this bishop here, which moves onto this diagonal not just to take the queen, but to deliver checkmate, since the king has no squares left. We don't need the queen to win the game. I know you hate it when someone plays the queen's gambit against you. That's why I'm bringing you an incredible trap, as always, to beat the queen's gambit, this opening that makes you lose so many games. c4, look, the queen's gambit. So we're going to throw our opponent off right from the second move. We give away the king's pawn. And not only that, but we give it away while letting them attack our knight. Where are we going to move this knight? There are two traps. The first trap I'm going to show you now is by placing the knight here. What are we threatening with the knight here? Well, we're threatening to bring the bishop over here, supported by this knight covering these squares, to deliver a nasty check to the king. But you might say, hey, chess teacher, you can just stop this with this move, and now the bishop can't come through here. That's okay. So we change plans and trade these pawns here. When they capture you, with which piece do you have to recapture? With the bishop, that's where the trap is. And with almost any move, like a normal move such as knight to f3, they've already lost the game. They'll have to resign after this bombshell. Knight takes on f2, giving up the knight again. They'll have to capture it no matter what, because we're in the same situation as one of the first traps. We're attacking the queen and attacking the knight. If they don't take, they'll lose material. And when they do take the knight, once again the king is diverted. We bring the bishop over here, check, and the king can't go back to defend the queen. He can capture with the king, with the pawn, or the king can move here or here, but whatever he does, the result will be the same. We'll take the queen completely for free, and we've beaten the queen's gambit in just a few moves. And to wrap up the video, for the last trick, I'm going to show you a trap where you can win in just 4 moves. And if your opponent is a beginner, they'll often fall for it. It's when they play this move here, which is really bad, but if you don't know how to take advantage of it, you'll end up in exactly the same position. So we'll sacrifice this pawn here. Yes, on the first move, we're giving up a pawn again. So now what, chess teacher? We're down a pawn. Yes, but now we're going to bring out the queen and give this check right here. Check. The king can't go anywhere. They can only attack our queen. And then we're going to make it look like we're really bad and just give away the queen. And when they capture her, we simply come in with the bishop. Checkmate. This king can't go anywhere, and none of the pieces can block the bishop. I hope you love this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't make me mad. And I'll see you in the next video, friends. Goodbye.